House of Kuru, Part 2, Chapter 27, The Sage's Prophecy. The second the sister of Hidimbi, asked for Bhima's hand in marriage, a miraculous sight occurred. A white light manifested in between them. The light then began to spread to the shape and form of a human. Within moments, a sage materialized in front of the couple. The sage was none other than the great compiler of the Holy Veda, the son of the great seer Parashara, known as Sage Vyasa. Kunti recognized him immediately and bowed in reverence. Without a second's hesitation, all the 5 Pandavas and Hidimbi touched the feet of the great sage of meritorious deeds. The sage smiled softly and nodded towards Bhima and Hidimbi. Bhima still sported a perplexed look. The sage had a warm, inviting look, and Bhima retained his puzzled look, and the sage saw right through him. Having doubts about this union, Bhima asked the sage, and Bhima had his throat tight and struggled to speak. On the one hand, the woman was both attractive and his mother permitted the union. On the other, she belonged to a race of beings known for bloodlust and death. Dear sage, this woman who claims to be the sister of the demon I just slaughtered belongs to the demonic Rakshasa race, a race known to slaughter and kill humans. How can I be sure that my offspring do not succumb to such lifestyle? Asked Bhima, and the sage Vyasa laughed out loud. Ha ha ha! A child only becomes whatever impressions are placed upon it. Do not worry about your offspring, Bhima, for you are sired by the god of wind, son of Pandu and Kunti. Your seed will have the best of nature within it. However, if that does not convince you, know that Hidimbi is part human from her mother's side, and hence, you, being human too, will significantly reduce the bloodthirsty nature of Rakshasas in her womb. Do not fret, said the sage, and Bhima looked visibly more comfortable. My lord, what about marriage rites? Who would perform the marriage? We have no priest here. We're living in exile in a forest, said Bhima. And once more did the sage Vyasa laugh out loud. Well, that might be an easy fix. Do you know that I structured the Holy Veda? Asked the sage. I just think I might be able to betroth and wed the two of you, chuckled the sage Vyasa. When it finally dawned on Bhima that this was the purpose, the great sage Vyasa appeared before them, to encourage and solemnize their wedding. Bhima and Hidimbi both folded their palms together and bowed before the sage Vyasa, and he instructed the sons of Pandu on a day which was the most auspicious for the wedding, and instructed them on what to bring and what to keep ready for the wedding ritual. After doing so, he disappeared into thin air. Do not worry about any of the materials for the wedding, sons of Pandu. I will bring them myself with my magical powers, said Hidimbi. And what was to take several days of scavenger hunts for firewood, clay to build the fire altars, and the clarified butter was all bought in a matter of minutes by the magic of Hidimbi. Hidimbi, we are so happy to have you in our lives as our sister, but I must make one condition to you, and you must obey it, commanded Yudhishthira. Hidimbi folded her palms and bowed. Tell me, Prince of Hastinapura, said Hidimbi. You may roam the entire earth with Bhima during the day, but he must be back by sunset. He must be with us during the night, and this condition will continue even after your marriage, for after dark Rakshasas and other demonic entities get more powerful, and Bhima is our strongest protector, instructed Yudhishthira. And Hidimbi bowed low and accepted the condition without any protest. Bhima and Hidimbi spent the following days roaming around the area where they camped. They visited streams, rivers, and hunted together. Hidimbi, being a member of the Rakshasa tribe, was able to fly, and using her magic, she would whisk Bhima to forgotten lands, high mountains, and inaccessible regions of the earth just for his amusement. However, every day before nightfall, Hidimbi would ensure Bhima was sent back to the sons of Pandu, the Pandavas, and their camp. Finally, the grand day of Bhima's betrothal and marriage arrived, and Bhima did his best to look like an amicable groom, despite living off the land in a forest. His brothers too dressed to the best of their abilities, but nothing could be compared to the bride. Hidimbi had dressed herself quite exquisitely. Draped in the finest silk sari, she appeared as an extremely attractive woman. Hidimbi approached the 5 brothers, and Bhima looked bashfully away from Hidimbi as the other brothers laughed out loud. Just as the cacophony of laughter was heard, a bright white light appeared in front of them. The light began to transform, and in an instant, the grand sage Vyasa, the incarnate of Mahavishnu himself, the storehouse of knowledge and the compiler of the holy Veda, appeared before them. Both the bride and the groom prostrated before the mighty sage of strict vows, and the marriage celebration commenced. Gentlemen, please wait for a few moments, as my students are yet to arrive. They will assist me with my ritual, said the sage, and sure enough, in a matter of time, a small retinue of other sages reached the camp where the Pandavas were encamped. The fire altar was built, and the sages began solemnizing the wedding. And the sage Vyasa muttered holy spells and incantations into the fire as he poured clarified butter and ghee on the fire. Bhima grabbed Hidimbi's hand and circled the fire altar as mentioned in the scriptures, and as the sun was about to set, the marriage ceremony was complete. The sage Vyasa blessed the couple and said, "Dear Hidimbi, you may spend your time here with Bhima, but once Bhima's son can lift his mace, you will need to depart from him," said the sage, as Hidimbi bowed low. Within months, a son was born to the couple, and he grew up very fast. All the 5 brothers played with the son of Bhima, and the sage Vyasa appeared once more and performed the naming ceremony. I will call him Ghatotkacha, as he is the son of the mighty Bhima, and Hidimbi, he will be of tremendous powers. This is my boon to him, said the sage, and both Hidimbi and Bhima flushed with pride. One day, as Bhima was out with Hidimbi, and the other Pandavas were out hunting or gathering firewood, Kunti saw a strange sight. A large number of trees had fallen where the child of Bhima, Ghatotkacha, was playing. Terrified that a demon or a Rakshasa was up to no good, she called out her firstborn son Yudhishthira to investigate the safety of her grandson Ghatotkacha. Yudhishthira grabbed his spear and fled to the spot to see a tremendous mace lifted with one arm by a 4-year-old and was swinging it above his head. Occasionally he would let off the mace and it would hit a tree, uprooting it. The 4-year-old Ghatotkacha would then laugh out so loudly that all the birds in the vicinity would flee in terror. Prince Yudhishthira had noticed several trees were uprooted, meaning that the boy was doing this for a while now. With considerable strength, he managed to lift the baby boy and bring him home to his grandmother and narrated the events. That evening, Bhima and Hidimbi also arrived to hear the news. The moment Yudhishthira mentioned that Bhima's son lifted his mace, Hidimbi's heart sank. As soon as Bhima heard the news, the sage Vyasa appeared before them. It's now time to move, gentlemen. In the city called Ekachakra, there lives a Brahmana. Go to his house and live with him. Live the life of a beggar. Go house to house, begging for alms. Live on whatever alms you receive, said the wise sage. As soon as Kunti heard her children would need to live on alms, she was devastated. Though she maintained her composure, the sage saw right through her eyes, but thought it best to keep quiet at this stage. The rest of the Pandava brothers, however, did not budge in the slightest. They happily took to the sage's advice and began packing their belongings to make them move. The very next day, Hidimbi and Bhima had a teary parting. But both Hidimbi and Ghatotkacha promised to arrive at any time Bhima thought about them. As they were saying their goodbyes, the other sons of Pandu began to pack up their remaining encampment, disposing of what they did not need and keeping only to the absolute minimum. As the sons of Pandu were busy in this, Kunti managed to wander in the woods, heart-stricken with grief and her throat too tight with a mixture of misery and unhappiness. The wise and intuitive sage Vyasa appeared before the daughter of Kunti Bhoja, and the second she saw him, she collapsed into tears. Tears she was holding back with tremendous strength. The sage slightly embraced the princess, and that was enough for her to regain her composure. Mighty sage, knower of time, compiler of the holy Vedas, you are asking my sons, who are princes, the scions of Hastinapura, sons of an emperor, sired by gods, to go house to house begging for alms. This is a pain for a mother, to see her children torn from royalty to beggars. How is it that we suffer the most despite holding firmly on the path of virtue and justice, while the sons of Dhritarashtra indulge in the comfort of palace life? My husband was taken away from me cruelly by fate, and my children were brought up in the forests. Finally, when we regained our kingdom, we are back here, back to forest life, living on alms. My grandson was born in the forest instead of a palace. Why is fate cruel to the just and virtuous? Wailed Kunti, and as she wailed, her lamentation and grief began to grow uncontrollably. Kunti, said the sage Vyasa in a kind but firm voice, I am the biological grandparent of both the sons of Pandu and the sons of Dhritarashtra, and I must therefore be impartial to both. You mentioned that the sons of Dhritarashtra were living in comfort. Are you certain of this? Asked the sage. With tremendous strength, Kunti once more regained her composure. Her eyes were red, drenched in tears, and she sported a swollen face. The pitiable state of Kunti plucked hard on the sage's heartstrings. The great sage Vyasa had a heart of gold. Despite this, I will tell you some secrets. With these secrets, your burden of grief will reduce. The pangs of grief will slowly ebb away. Listen to my prophecy, wise daughter of Kunti Bhoja. The sons of Pandu, the ones the people call the Pandavas, are blessed by the gods because they adhere to the strict command of virtue. There is a prophecy known only to the sages and the gods. Let me share this prophecy with you, and it will remove your grief. but you must never share this with any other mortal, or else it shall not come to pass, said the sage of great wisdom. Kunti leaned in to listen. There are 6 men, all endowed with superhuman strength, all of extreme prowess. All 6 men were born at the same time and have the same astrological birth chart, but they possess different qualities. They are Bhima, Hidimba, Vaka, Jarasandha, Ichika, and Suyodhana. Their death can only come from each other, and the one who slays any will slay them all. And each time he defeats one, his strength will grow, revealed the sage, and Kunti was awestruck. Since Bhima killed Hidimba, he has fulfilled the prophecy, ensuring that your son will defeat all the others. He does not know it, but Bhima's strength has grown twofold since his battle with Hidimba. But, as I said before, you must not tell anyone of this secret prophecy, said the sage Vyasa. The second Kunti heard the prophecy, her grief and sorrow dissipated. She readily accepted the fate. So you see, O princess, the gods favor those who adhere to virtue. Your sons, ever dedicated to virtue over vice, have earned the favor of the great god Mahavishnu. Hear the words of a sage. They will rule all of this earth, and when the time comes, they will perform the grand fire sacrifice known as the Rajasuya. The palace will be exquisite and designed by a celestial architect, and their fame will reach the heavens. Therefore, do not give in to sorrow. The great god Mahavishnu is the architect of destiny. Everything he does in mystery. Trust the God of all beings. He will protect those who never swerve from virtue, said the sage. And now Kunti had no trace of sorrow or grief in her heart. Wow, such a grand prophecy. But I do not understand one thing, dear Guru. When all 6 men share the same horoscope and moon sign, should they not all share the same fate? Asked Janamejaya. And Vaishampayana laughed. My prince, astrology and birth charts only indicate, they do not dictate. It is the will of the individual that turns the cogs of fate and destiny. You see, Hidimba was a horrid demon and Bhima was a virtuous prince. Naturally, the gods favored him in battle. But his birth chart gave both men similar features. Thus, O prince, always tread the path of virtue, said the Guru Vaishampayana. And Janamejaya nodded sincerely. What about the children of Drupada? What did the mighty king of Panchala do on the hearing of the death of Arjuna? Asked Janamejaya. And Vaishampayana continued.